Hello, dear students. This is Dr. Govind Saraswat, Assistant Professor in English from Government College Degana. Dear students, today in this lecture, we are going to discuss an important portion in the history of English literature, that is, the Victorian Age. It is prescribed for the students of BA third year. My intention in this lecture is to divide the whole plan into three parts. In the first part, we will discuss the historical information of the Victorian age. In the second, some of the main features of Victorian era. And in the third part, we will talk about some major authors and their works. So let's begin with the first part, that is the historical information of the Victorian age. The Victorian age is taken to cover the period from 1837 to 1901. Now, these 2 years they mark the beginning and ending of Victorian age. 1837 is the year in which Queen Victoria succeeded to the throne of England, and 1901 is the year in which she died. By the time the Victorian age came to a close, the tendencies of the modern age had already started appearing slowly. That is why some of the literary critics they hold the view that 1887, the year of Victorian Jubilee, should be taken to mark the end of the Victorian period in literature, because by that time a fresh generation of poets and prose writers had arisen, while those of the former generation who still survived had nothing of importance to add to their literary output. So, this is all about the short historical information about the Victorian age. Now, the second part is related to the main features of the Victorian England or Victorian era. Victorian era is also taken to be a golden period in England. The first and the most important literary age is the Elizabethan. It is taken to be the golden age in the history of English literature. Victorian era was also rich in literary output. That's why it can be taken to be the second golden age in the history of English literature. Now, some of the important features which we need to discuss under this topic, they are uh, the conflict between science and religion. Then it is an age of doubt and skepticism. It is an age of rapid industrialization, narrow nationalism, and there are many more. Let's discuss them one by one. The first one is that it is an age of rapid industrialization and prosperity. Victorian England had unprecedented wealth and prosperity. The British Empire spread far and wide. England had settled its colonies all over the globe, and Queen Victoria became the Empress of India in 1876. In a metaphorical way, it is said that the sun never set on the British Empire. England was then the greatest power in the world. The ever expanding horizons of knowledge, the new discoveries, the inventions of science, the easy and rapid means of traveling and transmission did much to destroy the old provincialism, to help the progress of democracy, and to change fundamentally the spirit of the world. Because of this rapid industrialization, there started a big gap between the rich and the poor. The rich became more and more rich, and the poor more and more poor. And because of this, the Victorian England, uh, the picture of Victorian England is uh, a mixture of prosperity and poverty. On the one hand, we can say some of the towns they are changing their their appearance because of this industrialization, and on the other hand, we witness the condition of those poor working class people who used to work there. Charles Dickens has aptly described the conditions of those who were working in these factories. So it is all about the first aspect or first feature of the Victorian England, that it is uh, an age of prosperity, but this prosperity had its grim aspect also, that is the poverty of those who work in those factories. Second, it is an age of abundance of literature, uh, poetry, then prose, novels, and you can say short stories. They they were also written in abundance because it was an age of prosperity. So people had leisure, and the approach of men of letters had has expanded. So writers started writing uh, the way many genres of English literature. Then the second feature is related to the theme. Okay, there is an abundance of literature, but what kind of literature? What color it can paint in the minds of the readers? It was a bit realistic literature, which is full of doubt and skepticism, because uh, Victorian poetry is a kind of revolt against romantic poetry. That's why there is a lack of imagination, lack of emotion, and we we for the first time face the grim realities of society in literature. Now there is no escapism. Poets like Alfred Lord Tennyson and novelists like Charles Dickens and Thomas Hardy and prose writer like Carlyle and Ruskin, they projected the Victorian age in their works as it is. So we can say that there is a kind of doubt and skeptic outlook in the Victorian literature. Then it was an age of narrow nationalism also. The Victorians were proud of their queen, they were proud of their country and their empire. Tennyson, in his White Man's Burden, he has also reflected this feeling of narrow nationalism. Then we can see that with the recent discoveries in recent inventions in science, that has created a great uproar in Victorian era. There started a conflict between science and religion. Victorian age faced a ceaseless conflict between these two. It was a conflict between head and heart. Religion was supported and sustained by faith, while science was born and bred in the mind by logic and reason. Christianity was sustained by the tenets preached in the Bible, and they believed in the existence of an omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent God who pervades all the universe. The world was believed to have been created at the command of God. So, this is what the religion believed. And in the course of time, it became a bit orthodox also. Religion became orthodox. So, with the new inventions and the writings of some scientists and some economists, they created a rift between religion and the other logical streams. Charles Darwin, in his Origin of the Species and his theory of the survival of the fittest, they were against what religion held to be true. Now, Darwin proved that we are not the offsprings of God. We human beings are evolved from apes. Then, second, he says that there is a ceaseless struggle going on in this universe, and who is the fittest will survive. So, it gave a cutthroat. It started a cutthroat competition where all the moralities they were shattered, and this uh, conflict between science and religion, it triggered a wave of doubt in the minds of people. they start they started question they started to ask questions on the veracity of uh, something that is given in the scriptures and what is taken to be true. So both the both science and religion, they had their own extremes. So some liberal thinkers and poets, they started to work out a famous compromise known as the Victorian Compromise. Tennyson and Matthew Arnold, they also helped in this way. Uh, they advised the churchmen to be less rigid and more liberal, and they appealed to the scientists to be more generous and humanistics. Tennyson, I would like to quote some lines where uh, he wrote it. He wrote these lines in memoriam, where he says that we have but faith we cannot know, for knowledge is of things we see, and yet we trust it comes from thee. A beam in darkness, let it grow, let knowledge grow from more to more, but more of reverence in us dwell. The mind and soul, according well, may make one music as before. So, in these lines, Tennyson is trying to work out a balance between science and religion. He wants that there should be a harmony between these two contrary streams, and we should avoid extremes. So, these are some of the major features of Victorian era. Now, let's talk about those who gave Victorian literature its own unique identity. There are some poets, critics, prose writers, and novelists which who need to be discussed before I end this lecture. The first in this list is Alfred Lord Tennyson. He is a towering figure over all. He is famous for his In Memoriam. wrote many poems, and you can say that Tennyson has incorporated the Victorian clavor in his poems. Like in the Princess, he talks about the female word, and his tone is uh, a bit free from gender bias. And he wrote Idylls of the King, Crossing the Bar, and then poems by two brothers, poems chiefly lyrical, and the two most important poems which we often find in the syllabus of various universities. They are Ulysses and the Lotus Eaters. So this is the literary output of Alfred Lord Tennyson. Then we have Robert Browning, who is famous as a writer of dramatic monologues. Robert Browning is famous for his optimistic nature also, because in an age of doubt and skepticism, he keeps on writing hopeful literature, a literature which is full of hope, and we can find its example in his famous My Last Ride Together. Then some of his famous poems are My Last Touches, then Pauline, and his collection of poems then are like Men and Women, Dramatic Personi, Dramatic Lyrics, and some of poems are like Fra Lippi and Del Sarto. So these all are written by Robert Browning. Then we have Matthew Arnold. He is a poet and a critic, and his poems are full of doubt, full of bleak future, bleak aspect of the Victorian age. In his Dover Beach, we can find these traits. Then he has written Sohrab and Rustam, Tristan and Shandy, and his critical zeal found voice in essays in criticism, literature and dogma, culture and anarchy. So these are the major poets of Elizabethan age. At some point in Victorian age, we feel that there is a shift in the tone and subject matter of poetry, from uh, being too much realistic and full of doubt. It became lyrical, musical, and a bit imaginative also, which is which we can find in the poems of A.C. Swinburne, William Morris, and Christiana Rossetti. So, so these are the famous poets of the Victorian age. Then uh, two prose writers, Thomas Carlyle and John Ruskin, they need to be discussed in the famous prose writers of Victorian era. Thomas Carlyle, he was a tailor by profession. So he wrote his autobiography, Sartor Resarters. Then other prose works of Thomas Carlyle are The French Revolution, Heroes and Hero Worship, Past and Present, Latter day Pamphlets, and John Ruskin. He was a painter also. So he wrote about the modern painters, the seven lamps of architecture, the stones of Venice, unto this last. This work, unto this last, it inspired Mahatma Gandhi so much that he translated this work in in the form of Sarvodaya. And two more works, Seasons and Lilies and The Crown of Wild Olive, are written by John Ruskin. Then Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, George Meredith, William Macphace Thackeray, Emily Bront, Charlotte Bront, Anne Bront, George Eliot, R.L. Stevenson. They are famous fiction writers of this age. Charles Dickens and Thomas Hardy, they represented the vein of Queen Victoria's England in their works. Charles Dickens' famous works include David Copperfield, Bleak House, Great Expectations, Oliver Twist, Hard Times, Old Curiosity Shop. And then Thomas Hardy, uh, he is famous for his The Mayor of Casterbridge. Then Tess, Jude, and he wrote uh, Under the Greenwood Tree, A Pair of Blue Eyes. So these are the famous fiction writers, and the Bronte sisters. Uh, they had already they also wrote some important piece of work, like Emily Brown's Wuthering Heights is very important, which is often uh, read by the students of undergraduate level. So in this third part, we have discussed some important authors and their works, although there are some more. But at this level, what a student of an undergraduate level should know has been covered. If you are curious and want to know more and more about Victorian age and the literary giants of this age, we will discuss in a classroom when you ask me. I hope that the way I have tried to cover every aspect of Victorian age uh, is okay, and you will find it useful. Thank you.